Microdrafting for week 3. For those of you who don't know, a microdraft is a back and forth draft, head to head. I'm only drafting against one other player. And to make up for that, we've got a limited draft board. So there's only 24 players to pick from. Let's check it out. We are loaded at quarterbacks at this board. Let's see who else we got. Running backs are pretty weak. Rashee Rice looks like a pretty good pick here. I love the way he's been playing. Lamar Jackson is also interesting. He's rock solid, but there's just too many good QBs on the board right now. Also like Kyren Williams. I'm going to roll with Rashee Rice. He's been a beast. Anyone tied to Mahomes. He seems to be like the one player in this offense who's doing well. So that's the first board that we're looking at. Next one, we've only got 4 quarterbacks, so it's a little scarce. CJ Stroud, I expect him to bounce back against Jacksonville. We could see he's got a really good rating. For the running backs, we got Swift, Jacobs, Bijan's been taken, Rachaad White, Taylor, Mason, Pollard. No one I love here besides Mason, who's got a good matchup against New England. And then for the receivers, we got Neighbors up against Dallas. Really good matchup there. He's an enticing pick. Garrett Wilson against Denver. Atwell, JJ, Olave, Jennings, McLaurin, Judy, and St. Brown. Rolling with JJ here. He's a no-brainer. We got back-to-back picks. Keep that in mind. Every pick is back-to-back. So my opponent, he went Bijan 1. We go JJ, and we could pick one more. Leaning towards another wide receiver here. Or quarterback's interesting too. I think Stroud's really the one that stands out here, especially with this matchup. We saw what Josh Allen did last night. Absolutely torched that defense. But St. Brown, even though he's got a tough matchup against Seattle, I'm going to roll with him. Double up at the wide receiver position. Let's check out the second board. Next one on the list, already made a few picks in this one. We got Gibbs, CD, Nico Collins, and we're going up against Daniel Jones. I don't know why my opponent picked him already. James Cook, DK Metcalf, and Mahomes. For some reason, my opponent liked Daniel Jones over Mahomes. As we could see, he's in the quarterback slot while Mahomes is in the SuperFlex. But anyway, since he's already picked 2 QBs, we can ignore the quarterback position. So let's check out the running backs, Swift, Jacobs, White, Charbonnet. No one I like there, especially if Kenneth Walker comes back this week. Let's check out the wide receivers, Mooney, Judy, McConkey. No one I like there. Tight ends, Bowers, Kelsey, Kincaid. Nope. And then let's check out the defenses. Again, a reminder, defenses score more than usual in this league, so they are a viable flex option. And that's also a thing. You can play the defenses in the flex. So if you see a really good matchup here, like the Cowboys have, decent matchup against the Giants, you could definitely play them in the flex over some of these worse skill position players like Judy, Mooney, or McConkey. But not loving this board. No one here standing out to me. Ooh, this is going to be a tough one. I'm leaning defense here, maybe the Cowboys. They're on the road, though. I like picking home defenses, but let's roll with Josh Jacobs, especially if Love comes back. I expect this offense to do pretty well, and we got back-to-back picks. So filled both running back slots, filled both receiver slots. We got 2 flexes and a tight end spot left. And Bucky Irving, he's been getting some carries in the Tampa Bay offense. There's no way I'm picking DeAndre Swift. I would like to pick Charbonnet here, but I'm just not sure if Walker's going to be playing this week. Let's roll with the Chiefs defense. Herbert's ruled out this week. Chargers have a bye the following week, so he's not going to be playing this week. He's going to have 2 weeks to get healthy, and Chiefs just seem to be a lower scoring team, a dead nuts under team, so don't mind that pick here, especially given what else we were looking at. Let's check the next board on the list. again, my opponent, Kittle Express, he's loving the quarterbacks. He went Dak and Josh Allen, leaving me with CJ Stroud, and I'm probably going to pick Brock Purdy since he's filled both quarterback slots. We can ignore the quarterback position here. Similar board to last time. Swift, Jacobs, White, Ford, Charbonnet. I already picked Hubbard. He exploded last week, and with Andy Dalton at quarterback, I think this offense and just the team in general is going to do a lot better. So let's check out the receivers. Don't mind Zay Flowers, tight end. He already went Goddard, leaving me with Bowers or Kincaid if he doesn't pick one of those two. But so I need a flex and a running back, and my opponent needs a flex and the running back. So he's probably going to pick a running back next. So if I want one, I'm definitely going to have to pick one here. Let's go with Jerome Ford against the Raiders. Didn't do too well last week, but he's got a good matchup. And I'm also thinking Jacobs as my flex position, either Jacobs or Flowers. This one should be a high-scoring game. I'm going to roll with Flowers here. Just think he has a little bit more upside. And Minnesota's D has been ridiculous, so I'll let him take Josh Jacobs, and I'm just out on Charbonnet until I get more information on Kenneth Walker. On to the next board. We got two great quarterbacks, Lamar and Hurts. Definitely don't want Caleb Williams here, so I'm curious when my opponent is going to start taking the quarterbacks. He went CeeDee Lamb first. Let's see who else is on the board. Bunch of good running backs. We got Singletary, Etienne, Bijan, James Conner, Tony Pollard, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Charbonnet. And then at receiver, it's a little weak. Tyreek Hill, he's tied to Skylar Thompson still. We got DK. That's a pretty good pick. I like him, especially given how weak the wide receiver group is. So that's going to dry up quickly, this position group. So I'm definitely tempted to lock in a DK right here. But there are a bunch of good running backs. I'm going to take Bijan to start with. And I'm tempted to take Gibbs or DK. Let's go DK. There's just a bunch of good running backs. So I just want to lock in one of the top receivers right now that's on the board. And guys, you could check out the ADP here of the players, the schedule with the spreads, and who the public's on. So we could see here the line opened up at 4.5, moved to 5.5. And we've got 33% on the Giants. And you can see that for every game here. And then also the ADP so far. You could check it out here. So everyone's loving Kyler Murray and his matchup against Washington. CD, Kyren, Sam Darnold, Lamar, Rashee Rice, Saquon, JJ. So just some auxiliary information to help you guys make your picks. Let's check out the next board. Only 3 quarterbacks here, so I could lock in both quarterbacks right here. Locking in a quarterback in my SuperFlex position. So that's probably what my opponent is thinking. That's why he took a QB first. He's going to take one of these if I don't. But let's see who else is on the board. Bunch of good running backs. And, so it's going to be tough. Jamar Chase with a really good matchup up against Carolina, and same with Neighbors. So it really just comes down to if I want to lock in one of these quarterbacks. If I don't, if I ignore it, my opponent can take a quarterback next pick, and then I could take Brock Purdy with my last pick, which is nice. Kind of lets me steal a pick. But I'm going to go lock in Purdy. He's got a good matchup. And I'll see if my opponent takes Mayfield, but I'm going to lock in Jamar Chase too. These are deep rosters. It's a SuperFlex league. So don't want to just jump the gun at a certain position. If it was someone other than Baker, someone a little bit better, plus how he did last week, and I don't love the matchup this week. So I'm just going to stay away and kind of play chicken with my opponent, see if he takes the QB and jumps the gun on it or not. Because once he fills up both quarterback slots and they're off the board, then I can just ignore the position. Next up on the list, we're going up against Purdy Boy. And we could see a ton of good quarterbacks, so I'm inclined to skip out on that position. Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Brian Robinson, Derrick Henry, Charbonnet. I could go Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, just monopolize the good running backs here. Wide receivers stink, so he definitely got a good positional advantage with CeeDee Lamb here, and I'm going to take Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley, just lock in both great running backs. So he'll be left with possibly a backup in Charbonnet and a Brian Robinson who's splitting carries with Austin Eckler. So I really like my start here. Two great running backs. And let's move on to the next board. Fig Jam, I've got the first pick in this one, so I don't have back-to-back picks to start. So we got a pretty big drop-off at quarterback. We got Daniels and Murray, both blue-tier quarterbacks, and then there's a big drop-off between them and then Mayfield, and then even a big drop-off, I would say, between Mayfield and Williams. Running backs are okay. A-Chain, I was expecting him to do better last week, given that Skylar Thompson was the QB. He can't really throw, but he just put up 8 points, I think, so not much, but I expect him to have a bounce back next week, especially given how Green Bay ran all over the Titans last week. So he's in consideration for this first pick. Godwin's been a beast, not taking Ayuk, even though he's got a good matchup. Juwan Jennings went off, and I don't know, just never been an Ayuk believer. And then we've got DK, pretty good. Couple of good receivers there. Let's roll with it's either A-Chain. Do I want the running back or lock in a top QB? Let's roll with A-Chain. I think he's got a bounce back in him next week, and he's got a good matchup against Tennessee. It only says 10 there, but we saw what Green Bay did to them last week. So let's take A-Chain. All right, up against the original. He went CeeDee Lamb to start with. QBs are pretty meh. Prescott, Nix, Caleb, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson. No one I love there. Let's check out the running backs. We got Etienne, Swift, Jones, Kamara, Taylor, Mason, Brian Robinson. And then at receiver, we got Chase, Wilson, Diggs, Metcalf. So I'm going to lock in Chase. Ripped it last week. Great matchup this week. And I'm leaning towards either Kamara, take one of the top running backs on the board, but I always lean towards the good wide receivers early, like a Stephon Diggs, who's got a good matchup, just because I feel like I can get good running back value later. I wouldn't mind having a Mason, a Jonathan Taylor's going late, even though doesn't have a great matchup. Wouldn't mind taking an Aaron Jones. So let's roll with Diggs here. Two wide receivers, two great matchups for them. So he went CeeDee first. I've got Chase and Diggs. All right, next game up. Here's the draft board. At quarterback, we got Stroud, Lawrence, Watson, Mahomes, Goff. And then at running back, we got Singletary, Jacobs, Barkley, Taylor, Ford, Montgomery. Barkley's been a beast this year. Probably going to take him. And yep, this is going to be my first pick. So I only have one of them. It's either Chase or Barkley. And really, when I try to decide between two pretty equal players, even though Barkley definitely has the edge, but I see who else is in the position group. So if I could get a distinct advantage at one of these positions, like if there's a bunch of other good running backs here, I'd lean towards the receiver. And if there are a bunch of good receivers here, I'd lean towards the running back. And there really doesn't seem to be too many great alternatives at either position. So I'm going to go with Barkley, just more consistent. So let's lock him in. Next up on the list, we've got Fusion Man. He started out with Kyron. Quarterbacks on the board: Prescott, Rodgers, Stroud, Caleb, Mayfield, Geno Smith. At running back, we got Hubbard, Kyron, who's been taken, Ford, Henry, Pollard, Charbonnet. And then at receiver, we got Christian Kirk, Diggs, Adunze, Jennings, Judy, Rice. So right off the bat, I'm immediately thinking a Rashi Rice and a Diggs combo. Just take the 2 top receivers on the board, worry about running back later. I'm fine with waiting on quarterback. It's another just position that I think I can get good value at later, unlike receiver. So let's lock in Rice and let's lock in Diggs. So he's going to be left with a Christian Kirk, a Dunze. Juwan Jennings isn't a bad one. We saw what he did last week, but I'm going to have a distinct advantage with my number 2 receiver here, and I can make it up at running back later. I don't mind Jerome Ford. We got a Chuba Hubbard, Derrick Henry. I expect Tony Pollard to do better, and then if Kenneth Walker doesn't play, Charbonnet would be a great pick. Next board on the list. For the quarterbacks, we've got Caleb, Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, who's been taken. He was the first overall pick. Goff, Geno. Our running back, we have Kamara, Taylor, Mason, A-Chain, Gibbs. Bunch of good running backs. And then at receiver, Neighbors, he's been a target hog, leaning towards him. Collins has been great, thinking about taking him. Rashi Rice again. So I'm going to take 2 out of those 3. Let's go with Rashi Rice to start. I think he's one of the most consistent receivers in the game right now. And let's pair him with Neighbors. Leaning Neighbors over a Nico Collins just because Collins has more competition with Dell and Diggs. Neighbors is the only guy there. But they both have great matchups. We'll see what my opponent does. If he doesn't take Collins next, would definitely think about taking him or Juwan Jennings. And then I just left the running backs alone. Guaranteed to get at least 2 of these, and I wouldn't mind having any of these 2. He could also go with a Hurts, who looks pretty good. And then that would leave me with a Goff, a Smith. But the thing is, if he takes a Hurts, then I can ignore the position until my last 2 picks, since he's already locked up both of his quarterbacks. So we'll see what he does. All right, so we started with Bijan and DK against Chris. He went, I think, CeeDee Lamb to start, and then went Lamar and Jalen Hurts. So he's got a really good start here. He's got the top receiver on the board, and he's got the top 2 QBs, and that's a distinct advantage over a Caleb and Daniel Jones. So this is going to be a tough one to crawl out of. Let's see how we can make this up. Receivers don't look too good. We've got Bijan, so the top running back on the board, and DK, one of the top receivers. Let's go with Gibbs. And we don't have to take a quarterback. We can ignore that till the end. Dell, Atwell, DJ Moore against LA, Darnell Mooney, Tyreek Hill. Kind of leaning towards Hill, but Skylar Thompson is just unplayable. I don't know if he's starting this week. It would be better news if the backup, I think it's Heineke, played. So let's roll the dice with Hill. He's still one of the top receivers in the league, and if they make a quarterback change, who knows what can happen, especially given the other options at the position. All of these guys I don't like at all, and running backs, kind of all just have them in the same category: a Singletary, an ETN, James Conner, Pollard. Whoever my second running back's going to be, I kind of just group them all in the same category, so I'm fine with waiting there. All right, next board on the list, we've got Fig Jam. Let's see who he went with. Daniels and Murray, so as expected, He locked up both quarterbacks, and we can wait to take Caleb and Baker at the very end. We've got the running back Singletary, Swift, Jacobs, White, Ford, Dobbins. Don't love anybody there. Let's take a couple receivers. Godwin's been a beast. Let's lock him in, and let's pair him with DK. Should be a high-scoring game against Detroit. So to start off, I've got A-Chain, Godwin, Metcalf, and he's got the two top quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray. All right, next up on the list. So he takes the quarterback, so that's a big advantage. He's got Mayfield. He's going to have the quarterback advantage in the SuperFlex. He's got Darnold, Bijan, Baker, and I've got Brock Purdy and Jamar Chase. And for our next pick, let's lock in Neighbors, a target hog with a good matchup against Dallas. And let's pair him with Mike Evans against Philly. He didn't do much last week as expected. He was being shadowed by Surtain, one of the top cover corners in the league. So I expect him to have a bounce back against a poor Philly secondary. So we've got Purdy, Jamar, Neighbors, and Evans in our flex. And my opponent's got Darnold, Bijan, and Baker, the third quarterback, in his super flex. All right. So Chris, he went James Conner and Tank Dell for his next two picks. We've got our running backs and wide receivers locked up. We can wait on wide receiver. Kind of feel all the same about tight ends, so don't want to reach for one of those. Don't trust the Cowboys defense that much, but wow. Raiders defense has a top matchup rating against Cleveland. I just don't trust the Raiders defense. We saw what Andy Dalton did to them last week, so probably going to stay away from the defenses in this draft board. But let's go with ETN and Singletary. Singletary's got a good matchup. I liked him going into the year. Should be a high-scoring game. And that leaves my opponent with Pollard or Charbonnet as one of his RB2s. So we've got our running backs, wide receivers, and flexes filled. So our next couple of picks in that one are just going to be tight end and then the two quarterbacks to finish it off. All right, Uber Ali's. He needs his receivers. He still needs two receivers and a flex. Who are we thinking here? James Cook's been a beast, and he's got a good matchup against Baltimore. So let's take James Cook, ride the hot hand. Thinking about Adams here against Cleveland. Or, I want to check Higgins' stat line. I don't know how he did last week. But let's also check the defenses. Titans got a good one against Miami. Miami only put up 3 points last week. Don't trust the Raiders defense. Don't trust the Niners defense. Do like the Jets defense, but I don't know if I can trust the Titans. I think I'd rather just have a skill player right here. Let's go with Adams. One of the best receivers in the league. I like him in my flex. So, and my opponent's going to still needs two wide receivers, so just dwindling that position down. All right, we're on the clock. We need a running back, tight end, and super flex. No quarterbacks left. We could take the top tight end on the board, Brock Bowers, and then we're going to fill the last running back slot. Or we could fill the SuperFlex. I like Jerome Ford there. Let's see who my opponent needs. He needs a receiver and a tight end. I'm going to lock in Jets defense as the SuperFlex. And let's check out next board up. We got Stroud, Lawrence, Watson, Mahomes, and Goff at the quarterback position. At running back, we got Singletary, Jacobs, Taylor. I started out with Barkley. He was my first pick. Ford, Montgomery to finish off the running back group. And then at receiver, he went Jamar Chase, first pick. Dell, Atwell, London, Olave, Pittman, Judy, Flowers, Lockett. And then he also went Goddard early. That's a surprise. I don't know what he's doing picking Goddard that early. I know he went off last week, but just a tight end that early just doesn't make sense to me. We should be smoking this guy. He doesn't stand a chance. I could double up at quarterback here, go with Stroud and Mahomes. That looks pretty enticing. Or I could take one of the top running backs on the board. Really, any option is open to me. I only have one running back. Like the Steelers' defense this week. I know I can get them later. None of the running backs are popping off the board for me. I'm going to go with Stroud. I expect him to rebound against Jacksonville. We could see how bad they did last night against the Bills. And we can see right here, 30th ranked defense against quarterbacks. So I really like that pick. And then I'm really just deciding if I want to double up at the quarterback position here. Don't want to take Lawrence, Watson later. So it'd be, do I want to take Mahomes now or wait for a Goff later? Goff's been okay, but he's pretty reliable. Or do I want to take one of the top running backs on the board like a Montgomery or Taylor? Let's roll with Mahomes. Divisional matchup. Even though it looks pretty tough, I think he's going to do well. Next game up, we got Purdy Boy. Let's see Purdy Boy. He's got Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, and CeeDee Lamb. Really strong start, actually. I've got a pretty strong start, too. Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley. Could go with Derrick Henry and pin him to Charbonnet and Brian Robinson. That looks pretty enticing. I'm going to have a really big advantage at the running back position. And then, let's see. Wide receivers are really weak. Ayuk's been doing nothing this year. Kind of like George Pickens. Fields has been playing really well. Don't need to take a quarterback until the very end. I can lock in a Stroud, a Richardson, a Fields, maybe even a Geno. Let's go with Ayuk. He's got a good matchup, and he's been quiet all year long, so maybe he can pop off this week. But both strong starts from both teams. And we got one pick left in this draft. I'm going to take Caleb. It's hard to pass up a quarterback in the SuperFlex, especially over someone like Charbonnet, who might be splitting carries this week. And you have these mediocre receivers, no tight ends, and then not going to take a defense. So we can check out the projection here. 134 to 137. Let me know which team you guys think will win. So he's got a really big advantage in the super flex position. That's what happens when you go two quarterbacks early. I've got an edge at running back. And then we've also got the leaderboard. I'm at the top, and we've got our ratings right here, followed by Delzer, Jake, or Andrew, Evang, Jake, Man I'm Dead, Lover, CJ Allen, and Flex Fantasy. So every time you win, your ELO goes up by 10, and if you lose, it goes down by 10. So the more games you play, the more opportunities you have to increase your score.